first off, I do go through it in the book. It's pretty detailed. And it's called the 3HQ. So we talk a lot about IQ. We talk a lot about EQ, your emotional quotient. HQ is something new. It's different. We're talking about a new, different world we're in. It's not a new normal. It's new and different. And how are we going to survive in a different world that nobody has ever experienced before? And so 3HQ is it gives you, it's a life raft for you when you're going through relaunches. And the 3 in the HQ is the head, the heart, and the higher self.
Yep. And those are very important things. And here's a question that I had a long time ago when you first mentioned it was, how do you get those? Like what made you go, these are the 3, like these are the main 3, and this is what we really need to be focusing on versus just picking one, because EQ and IQ only have really one aspect.
Okay, that is such a good question, Patrick. So here's the thing, everyone. We did not go through the detail of the questions. I said, just go with it. So I'm laughing right now. I'm like, that's a really good one. So when you think about 3HQ and you think about how most of us operate, I know certainly I have, continued to do this. I know that my clients have. We operate from our head. It's a lot of like that, overthinking. It's a lot about the negative thoughts that come into our brain. And once we start to think about negative thoughts, we actually like increase more negative thoughts, right? It's like that one idea and then the other, and then a boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden you're ruminating over like all these negative things, whether it's like around your job, whether it's around a relationship. I know a lot of people right now are really struggling and wanting to get their bodies in shape, and they're not feeling great after the whole, pandemic. And they're low on so many different levels. They're low on themselves. They're self-sabotaging themselves just, with that whole, I'm not good enough. Like, look at me. I don't look the way I want to look. I don't have the job I want to have. I'm not making the money I want. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so we can't get out of our head. And it's hard because once you go down and you start to spiral, it's like, I think of it, there's a slide in Atlantis, and it's this massive slide. It's like an Indiana Jones type of slide. And I remember taking the kids there, and I was at the bottom waiting for, I did do one slide, but the kids were going down, and I got to see all these other women, and women were losing their tops as they were going down because it was so steep.
No.
And I'm like, oh my God, please tell me my girls are not going to, all of a sudden be exposed. But it is a slippery slope, because when we start to notice that things are not going right in our life, what do you think that does? It actually causes more of you to notice what's not going on, and then more of that. And once you start focusing on that, that's what you get in return. So when I started to dive deep into this, and by the way, this is a 20 plus years of coaching. I mean, we're talking like transformational strategists here, because I've been so passionate about learning about neuroscience, learning about the psychology behind all of this, that I noticed that we try to silo everything about our lives. Like, okay, I'm just going to work on myself right now. It's all about me. If I can get myself, then everything's going to be great. Or I'm just going to focus on my work, all this other distraction. But the problem is, we're not just all about our work, or we're not just all about like, let me just zen out and really figure this out. We're human beings. We have a life out in the world. And that's where I realized that if I were coming at a coaching client, for instance, and I was just like, okay, let's just focus on your business. And this honestly happened to me early in my career. I was talking to this gentleman, and he was really struggling with getting his business to the next level. And he really wanted to, he couldn't get that repeatable, scalable process in place. And he didn't know what the heck was wrong. And so we were digging deep into it. And I had a company called White Space Inc., INK, with another gal. And we had filled out this whole board of everything that was going on in his business. And then I had this epiphany, and I'm just like, okay, that's great. It's just taken us, a couple hours to put all this down. And I said, erase it all. And he's like, what? Hold on. What are you talking about? That's the craziest thing. And he said, no, erase it all, because it's not all that stuff. It's pick the things that worked and let's further develop those. And by the way, at that point, we started to go down the path of like, okay, what's happening in his home life? And I asked him this very question. I said, if we could improve, because he said, I always ask about what level, where are you 1 to 10? And he's like, I'm about a 4 at home. And I said, what if we could increase that to what would be a real win for you? And he said, oh, win, my God, it would be like maybe if I could get to a 7 or 8 in my marriage, my God. And oh, by the way, my kids don't really like me right now. And I said, let's do this. Let's get you to love your personal life as well as your business life. All right. So at this point, we are going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I'm going to share with you what people pay thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars to know. And it all stems from the 3HQ.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And I know we're all on the edges of our seats waiting for the rest of that story. So to finish this off, let's go through the rest of his, and then let's start with what it sounds like he was having issues with, the head. So if you want to go ahead and finish the story for us.
Ooh, so good. So we started to, for those that are just joining us, this guy that I was actually working with, he couldn't figure out how to get ahead. He couldn't figure out how to have it all. Right. His marriage was suffering. His business wasn't where he wanted it to be. And we decided not to silo out one or the other. And instead, we started to look at it as a whole, which we all are as humans. Right. And once you get one area cranking, the other one, and then when the other one starts to work, it all becomes this wonderful ever loop. So with this gentleman, it was so great because we started to really focus on getting him out of his own way, getting him out of the negative thoughts that were continuing to come up in every area of his life. And once we did that, once we started to really identify what was at the root of this, his business started to massively take off, and not from a one and done, one quarter, no, every single quarter. And his marriage started to, remember I said he wanted to have it be like a 7 or an 8, and it was about a 4. All of a sudden that started to take off. And those kids that didn't like him, yeah, you got that. He all of a sudden had that amazing, amazing life. And it was in all areas, not just one. And that's the problem with just focusing and siloing off just one, because you don't want just one area, just, hey, this is so great, but the rest absolutely sucks. You want it to be something inclusive of every area.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. So starting with the order that we normally do this in, let's start with the head. And it's the first thing that most people have. And it's honestly something that has the most impact in the beginning of the process, because it is what shapes the rest of the process.
Well, and if you think about, Patrick, that we have 6,250 thoughts, it's no longer the old scientific numbers of 60 to 80 thoughts, and 85% are negative. We know that it's around 6,000. And if you think about that, you have the choice of what you think. You have a situation that you're in. Something comes up, something triggers you, something, you start to think about. And if it's negative, then it's going to trigger an emotion, because a thought happens first, then an emotion. And when a thought and an emotion are repeated over time, it becomes a belief, empowering or disempowering, those limiting beliefs. So I always say, start with being aware of the thoughts you're thinking. And if I were to tell you this, if I were to say, your thought today creates your tomorrow. I mean, and you go with the fact that this is a truthful statement, what kind of thoughts would you want to be thinking today?